Beautiful. Hey everyone, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here, hello. Okay, a follow-up show today on the blessed Hot Rod Deluxe. Bless its soul, its cotton socks and all the other things we could bless on it. But first, before we get into all of that, please head to thatpedalshowstore.com and pick ye up some merch.
We're all merched up.
We're all merched up. It's the primary way we fund this show, along with some other ways, but that's the primary way. So please go to thatpedalshowstore.com and get some things for which we are very grateful. And subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube.
Yes.
Would be great.
Yeah.
We get happy when the numbers go up.
Yes. That's how shallow we are.
Yeah. Numbers go up, depth goes down. All right, so we're following up. Why? Because we did a show called something like Tame the Hot Rod Deluxe, and it was about, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, something like that now. And quite rightly, a lot of you said, hang on a minute, you missed a load of really obvious stuff. So Dan and I obviously dove straight into the deep end and did all the complex things, such as using EQs and compressors in the loop, using the TheGigRig underliner in the loop, doing all kinds of things, speaker attenuators.
All that stuff.
That were relatively complex. And a lot of people quite rightly said, well, hang on a minute, there's a load of stuff you can do.
You buffoons.
Yeah, you buffoons. That's simpler than that. So what we're going to run through today, actually, before we do that, explain the problem, Dan. What's the problem?
So the problem is the Hot Rod Deluxe has a reputation of being quite the strident sounding amplifier, which is why it works so well live and why it's one of the most popular valve amps like in history. It is a loud, clean amplifier. Obviously, it has an overdrive channel. You can switch between them.
Which we are going to get into.
Yeah, and I personally really like the overdrive channel. I think it sounds fantastic. But it can be... There's a problem. It basically, you get there's a volume control. It's like nothing loud.
Yeah.
And getting that right to the sweet spot can be a bit tricky.
And there was some confusion. We'll just cover this one off before we find out why he's playing that guitar. We'll just cover this one off. A lot of people said, I think one of the comments, my favourite comment about this particular topic was, oh my God, 25 years in production and they can't even change the taper on the volume pot. They did change the taper on the volume pot, to be fair, in the version 4. But that's not really the problem, because no matter what the taper of the volume pot, for sure, it's quite difficult to get it to the point where you like it the most if a lot happens in a short space. But the sound is going to be the same, right?
Exactly.
So even if the taper on the volume pot is much smoother, you still get that kind of very hard, transient, loud, clean, spiky response. And that's the problem. I'm very keen to say like that because there's millions of people who love that sound and use it. The problem is if you're trying to use it at lower volume and make it feel nice.
Yeah.
Dan, before we explain what that guitar is, demonstrate the problem.
Yeah, so it's...
I think it sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I do too.
But it's quite alarming, isn't it?
It's strident. It's very... There's a mid-frequency in that I haven't heard in any other amplifier ever.
We'll come on to that in a sec because there's another amp here. That sounds nice. Dan is on an SG tip at the moment.
Yeah, I'm exploring the possibilities. It just looks so freaking cool, doesn't it?
So it's a modern 61 standard with vibrola.
Yeah.
Yeah, USA.
It's not a custom shop or anything.
It looks
a friend of mine has it.
the bomb.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It does.
I'm going to just turn the mic preamps down a bit because, as you see, when he hit that chord there and it already hit 104 dB, the volume on the Hot Rod Deluxe, I'll do some amp shots in a minute, but it's currently at 2 and a bit.
Yeah.
So it's not up there.
And because the amplifier has so much headroom, when you hit it, it's like, just give it to me, I can take it. There's lots of amplifiers, when they get to that level, they will limit and they'll sort of shut down a little bit, which can be really cool. But one of the things that people love with the Hot Rod Deluxe is because it has that headroom, it works so well with pedals. Fabulous thing.
So let's get into it. These are the things that you suggested we should do. The first one is going to be use the blooming low input. Look, it's there. It's minus 6 dB. Use it. Number 2, use the drive channel. You can set the drive channel up to sound really nice.
Yes.
Not necessarily the kind of very oversaturated thing that it can be sometimes associated with. Try the Dr. Watson Lion Tamer. The Dr. Watson Lion Tamer, which we'll show you in a bit. And then mess about with valves. So we're going to swap out some preamp valves and some power valves just to see what that does. That's what we're going to cover in this show.
Nice.
We're not going to change the speaker. That's the other thing you could do, obviously.
Yeah, there's a line.
Too much hassle. All right. Why is this other amp here? Ideally, we would have had 2 Hot Rod Deluxes, but we don't have 2 Hot Rod Deluxes. So we thought we would set up essentially a control amp. And we've set the hook up to sound as similar as we can, bearing in mind it's a completely different amp and a completely different speaker. Nevertheless, all right, so let's leap to thing 1 then. We're going to use the low input. I'll try and show you what's happening on the top of the amp as we do it. The low input on the Hot Rod Deluxe and indeed on most Fender amps that have 2 inputs on a particular channel, they say it's 6 dB less.
Right.
Now that's 6 dB less at the input, presumably. It's not going to be 6 dB less once it comes out the speaker.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's see. Okay, let's fire up amp cam.
Is this a Knowles knobs? Or we're not there yet?
I wonder what the settings are.
Here's where we are on the Hot Rod Deluxe then. Ooh. Just be aware that the master volume doesn't work on the clean channel. So as I said, we're just above 2, somewhere between 2 and 3. So Dan, you play, and what I'll do is I will remove the input from the high input and put it in the low input. You liking it? Play a bit.
It seems to have more chime. It's not just the volume thing, right? There's an EQ difference between the two.
What I'll do is I'll put it into the input 2 and turn it up a bit so that we're
Okay,
at the same place,
great.
yeah?
Great.
So go again.
It's a fundamentally different sound. It's not
Is it
hitting.
softer?
Yeah, it absolutely, yeah.
So it's taking away some of the spike.
Taking away some of the spikes, that bit of push into the amplifier where it just softens a little bit in the high channel.
Yeah.
The whole thing's soft now.
So it feels flat.
Yeah.
Try the overdrive pedal.
Put that back in the high channel for me.
That is the high channel.
All right.
Here's the low channel. Sorry, the low input.
Back to the high channel for me. Super interesting. A lot less difference with the pedal on. That's pushing the amp a bit harder.
Tonally, I preferred it in the low input.
Yeah, with the overdrive pedal on.
With the overdrive pedal on, because I felt like there was less histrionic
Sure.
stuff happening in the preamp.
Yeah.
And by that I mean all the kind of you get on top of an overdriven preamp. That might end up sounding flat in the recording. Because what quite often happens is that stuff is what gives the glue.
Yeah, right, okay.
But I just straight tonally stood there by the amp. I preferred the low input with the overdrive pedal by some margin.
Sure. But I want to hear it with the Strat.
So the volume knob goes between to 2.5 to just over 3 when you switch the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'll just do it without a pedal at the moment. Just too weak with the Strat in the second input.
Okay.
Let's try the overdrive pedal.
So I go back to...
So now we're in the first input.
I think I prefer the Strat in input 1.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And you know, guess what? In the manual they say input 2 is for humbuckers and active guitars.
No.
Well,
Okay.
They say you might want to try it for high power humbuckers and active guitars.
Interesting.
Okay, input 2, we like it. Definitely has its use.
Definitely.
Right, use the blooming drive channel. So the drive channel on the Hot Rod Deluxe is much maligned. If you go onto an internet forum, dare you step there, you'll wade into the virtual punch-up that is the Hot Rod Deluxe overdrive channel. It is universally, actually, it is largely disliked.
Yeah.
We like it.
Very much so.
So rather than get into the overdrivey bit, what we're actually going to try and do is essentially set it up as a softer. We're going to try and alleviate the problem of the clean channel, which is too pokey, too transient, not enough kind of bloom and sustain in notes. Yeah?
Very good. Very good.
Maybe we will have a listen to it because I do want to hear it with the SG. I think it's going to sound cracking. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the Hot Rod Deluxe has 2 modes in its overdrive channel. One is called drive and one is called more drive, which I'll show you. So to go to the other channel, we go to channel select. Bop. Now we're in the overdrive channel, and now this master volume control now is in play. So if we just stick that up to about there for a second, and Dan, if you play.
I mean, that's not fun.
Sorry for the terrible amp cam, by the way. Anyway.
Never apologise, never explain.
It's just rubbish. So that's why, I mean, you know, it doesn't, perfectly usable, but it's not my favourite overdrive sound ever.
The higher gain settings are just...
Yeah. What's the experience at the back of the room like, Hayden?
Not great.
Yeah, so we got a lot of...
Yeah.
So we're gonna move away from that and try and get something that's basically like a pushed clean channel.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
And to do that, sorry if this is too simplistic for some of you, but for others who maybe might not be aware, the way you do that is you turn up the output of the amplifier, the master volume, and you turn down the channel gain, right?
Yes.
Which is what we'll do. So we're going to put this all the way up to about there, and we're going to just see if we can touch this on.
It's already, I mean, that's really usable. And when I push it, it doesn't go wah and take your head off.
So by the unbelievable technology of TRS switching, we are able to change the amp channels in real time, people.
Amazing.
In real time. Sorry, that's a bit of an in-joke. Dan and I never use channel switching amps, and it always seems like, whoa, check this out. Right, foot switch. So here we go then. We're currently on the overdrive channel, and I'll switch to the clean channel, and we'll just switch between them, right?
Yep.
So give it a go.
So it's very definitely grittier and even more pronounced mid-range.
Yeah.
Um,
It's harder work as a push clean sound, isn't it?
Can we let's try reducing that mids a bit and can we reduce the front end gain even more?
Yeah. I'll do amp cam at the moment. The drive is currently on 2, and
Oh,
the master's
okay.
on 10.
Right. So we're already.
If we keep going, we're
We're
going to
gonna
not
have
get
nothing
enough
left.
volume.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Let's try it. there's one more thing we could do. I'll turn all the EQ down and see, see if we can do it that way.
Okay.
So I'll put it back on the drive channel, get amp cam back out. So try this then. I'm going to turn the drive up. Let's see if we can turn it down to clean up to the point.
Okay. So that's really nice. But what I've got there is the guitar's down quite a lot.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of gain range there. But yeah, have a go on the Strat.
It's really nice and really playable.
It works tremendously well as a second channel, but that's not going to make the clean channel redundant.
No. Scooping all that bass away, a great deal of that lovely bass you get on the clean channel of the Hot Rod Deluxe. It's a very different thing.
Yeah.
I dare say it might be somewhat more usable in a lot of the musical situations I play in, because I very rarely use that big clean sound.
Yeah.
But as the lovely, big, enveloping, lush, clean sound, and it's surprising to be talking about the Hot Rod Deluxe in those terms, because a lot of people do consider it a bit harsh and a bit middly and boxy sounding compared to something like a Deluxe Reverb. Actually, compared to that, so if you've got Deluxe Reverb here, a nice scoopy bass and treble, bass field.
Yep.
Then you've got the Hot Rod Deluxe clean channel, which is like, oh, we've discovered mid-range.
Yeah.
Pokey, bright, hit you between the eyes mids, and then the
let's have more of that.
Yeah.
Then turn down the bass a bit more.
And then that's the overdrive channel.
Yeah.
Again, I think it'll work great in a band, that sort of setting.
Beautifully.
But there's no more volume. That's it.
That's it. So any more volume you want, you've got to turn the gain up.
And that's not loud enough for me.
No.
Even though
that is fascinating.
Yeah. Whereas you think by the time you get to 3 in the Hot Rod Deluxe clean channel,
you're taking
loud.
people's heads off. Yeah.
We will address some of this in a minute, because we are going to swap some valves around, and that might change things dramatically.
Ooh.
So far, Dan, would you use the low input? We decided it's good on humbuckers, some humbuckers.
It's good on humbuckers, and I do like it if there's going to be a pedal on all the time, which, like for me, I always have a gain stage on. So probably the low input will address some of that stuff. However, it doesn't, even though it says a 6 dB reduction of gain at the input, I guess that's all dependent on, I guess if you've got a higher impedance from, the output of the guitar, then that's one thing. But if you're hitting it with a low impedance thing, it is a lot of that, it's going to push past that. Yeah. So you're not going to get a massive, I think it's a tonal change. It's a slight gain reduction, but as far as a volume reduction is concerned, it's,
I would agree. To me, it was more like being flattened out.
Yeah.
Like an uninspiring compressor rather than
we'll take that sound
just
and then
a
reduce
uniform.
it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because of course, by reducing the input level, the input gain, as it were, you're then reducing everything that happens from there on. And because you're dealing in such tiny, tiny little signals there that are amplified massively,
absolutely, by
the valves, then the change in that is quite significant.
Sure,
is quite significant. Okay, let's move on. Dr. Watson Lion Tamer. I'll do a close up of this. We kind of addressed this by talking about putting things in the effects loop that attenuate, but there is this product called the Dr. Watson Lion Tamer, and there are many other such products like the JHS little black amp box.
Yes.
Which a lot of people mentioned. It's simply a passive volume control that sits across the
send and return of the effects loop.
Loop. Works particularly well in the Hot Rod Deluxe because when you use the effects loop in the Hot Rod Deluxe, the return, the master volume is defeated and it is on 10 in the clean channel.
Right.
So it's maxed out. Therefore, that volume
gives you your
complete volume. I took some pictures of it and I showed Dan. What is it inside?
It's the 10K passive pot.
Yeah.
Connected wiper to one side, and that's it. It's really simple.
Next question is what we've done with it, Dan. There it is. It's literally that. Like I say, we'll do a close up of it, but it is thusly spaced, so you can plonk it.
Yeah.
They also do a version for the PV Classic 30 and maybe some other stuff. I bought it on eBay, cost 20 quid.
Nice. Very nice.
You might say, oh, good, knob, 80p, 2 jacks, quid each, pot.
You try and make it for 20 quid. You sit down and you put that together for 20 quid.
Nah.
No thanks.
No. So all I'm going to do is insert it.
Thusly.
Ooh.
Come on.
Right, Dan. Gagne, this is... we'll turn the Hot Rod Deluxe volume up to 3. Glasses. There's nothing good about getting old, Dan. Right, Hot Rod Deluxe is now on 3, and here's what happens if Dan plays now. Because... So my first question is, I'm going to put it back to 2.5. I'm going to put it on 10 and pull it out and see what happens.
Okay.
It's doing something simply by being
there. Simply by being in there, it's already reducing.
Yep. Okay, so what we'll do now then is we'll turn this down. And we'll crank this up. How you liking that?
Fantastic. That sounds fantastic. Lovely.
As you saw, the volume is now on 4, right, in the Hot Rod Deluxe. And what we find with a lot of Fender amps is they do have this particular point.
Yeah.
Our Deluxe Reverb, for example, 4.5, 5, it goes, ah,
Yeah. And opens up.
I'm alive. And I think this is doing the same thing. I mean, much past this, we are getting into quite a lot of overdrive.
Yeah.
I'll just crank it all the way round to maximum and see how much overdrive we get. Shouldn't
Okay.
get much louder. That's pretty good.
Fantastic.
It's on 8 on the clean channel at the moment.
Really nice.
Really nice. Okay, we like that. The downside to that, obviously, is if you want to use your effects loop, you're stuffed.
Yep.
Which also means, try the delay into the front.
Okay.
Because if we're putting over, I was going to say, yeah, because the delay is going to get mushy, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, to explain that, the reason the effects loop in an amp is where it is it becomes after the preamp section, right? So
Exactly.
you put delay after overdrive.
Yeah, exactly. You think of the preamp just as an overdrive pedal. So if you're using the front end of the amplifier, the preamp, to achieve your gain, then having a delay pedal that can take that signal level is one thing, and then putting it after that gain section, you are taking that sound and delaying it. So which is why you have an effects loop, put in the effects loop. However, if the delay goes before that, you're taking those repeats and distorting each one of those repeats. So if you imagine having a delay and getting it all set up really nice, and then putting a really heavy limiter after that delay, so anything that comes out of that delay is going to be, at the same level.
So the experiment then is, let's hear a nice clean delay.
Yep.
We'll then
Stick that in
and
it overdrive.
see how far we can go before the delay starts sounding, if indeed it does at all.
Okay. Beautiful.
Okay. Sounds great.
It does sound great. You can hear at the higher gain settings, you can hear the delay
Above
covering
5,
itself.
it started to crunch a bit, didn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. But
so all of which is to say that given that you're using the Lion Tamer in your effects loop, you can't then run your delay in the effects loop. So
Yeah.
if you are going to run it into the front of the amp, get above 4 and 5, it will start to mush up a bit.
yeah,
That's blooming interesting.
it is. It really is. Really
think-
nice.
Before we get to the end of the show, we should try our combination of the favourite things,
Yeah,
because that is really groovy.
it was very nice.
Very groovy indeed. Right. Standing up a lot today. Be good for the waistline, Dan. Okay, so thing 4 then. This is going to be a lot of mucking about, so expect some little flip cuts here. Valves.
Yes.
Apart from the Lion Tamer, the most popular thing anyone said was change out V1
Yeah, V1.
in particular, but some people were also talking about V2. In a valve amp, what does V1 mean, Dan?
So V1 is the first valve, first gain stage. So the input signal goes in, and that V1 amplifies the signal. And depending on the amplifier, you can have like loads of different gain stages. But the idea is you need to amplify that signal before it gets to, generally a phase inverter, and then that goes into the power stage. But we need to take our tiny little guitar signal and amplify it to a point where it can work with the power section.
And then after V1 comes V2, and that might do some other things, might be another gain stage, might come pre or post EQ. After that will come some other gain stages, and these are used to either increase the gain to create distortion, or they're used to do things like send and return reverbs. One is used for the phase inverter, which is just before the power valve. So there's all those little tiny valves you see towards the volume control of your amp. Starts with V1, goes all the way through. Fender Hot Rod Deluxe has a 12AX7, which is a dual triode, a 9-pin dual triode preamp valve of a certain kind.
Yeah, basically means there's two separate little gain stages in there.
Yeah, and as such, you can use it for 2 stages of amplification, which is
Exactly.
what they do. You might have also heard it referred to as an ECC83, which is the British designation of a 12AX7. And after that, we get other kinds of valves that are interchangeable, such as a 12AT7, a 12AY7, a 12AU7, and there are others such as 57, 51, etc. They are all dual triode 9-pin tubes, which are interchangeable with the 12AX7. So the point of caution here is if before you even think about doing this, just check that the valve that you're going to replace your 12AX7 with is definitely compatible.
Absolutely. Don't stick an EF86 in there, otherwise you're going to have all sorts of trouble.
Yes. So just make sure. Now we do have some other valves here. I don't know if we're going to try them all, Dan. But according to Das Internets, if we say the 12AX7 has a gain factor of 100, a 5751, which is the same as a 12AX7 for military use,
Right.
apparently has about 70%.
Oh,
But
okay.
electronically, it's the same.
Right.
A 12AT7 has about 60,
Right.
and a 12AU7 has 20.
Oh,
So 5 times less gain.
wow.
Now, on some of the forums I've been reading, and YouTube experts will know this, there are electronic differences in the tubes. So, for example, an AU7 or an AT7 might handle plate voltage very differently.
Sure.
So the way in which they work is different.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, the point is, if you stick a lower gain dual triode 9-pin valve in that V1, it should have a fairly significant effect.
Yeah, because it'll be passing through less signal to the following stages.
Yeah, we had a rummage around the TPS drawers, and we found a 5751, an AT7 and an AU7. The AT7, so I read, even though lots of you suggested it, is poo-pooed quite significantly on forums.
Right.
People saying it doesn't sound very good, and it's better off as a phase inverter or a reverb.
Okay.
Send and return. I don't know. So why don't we pick 2 out of these to try? I want to hear the 5751 because it is reputedly the tube that Stevie Ray
Oh, okay. All right.
put in V1 of some of his amps.
Okay.
And then, shall we hear the AU7 for
Sure.
the maximum difference?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we might invoke the hook here, but I think that might be turning into a damp squib of an idea. Just because it sounds so flipping different.
Sure.
But the Hot Rod Deluxe,
Yep.
let's set it on 3, okay?
Yep.
So it's a bit louder. Get a sound that you're happy with, and then I'll record what the settings are.
Okay. Nice.
It sounds ace. I'm going to take it down there because we're not real world here, are we? The problem is people can't use it that loud.
Yeah, but I want to hear what happens at that loud when you change the valve out.
Okay, can we go to 2.5? Let's just see if you really hate this, we'll go back to 3.
Okay, all right. That's fine.
It's fine.
That's fine.
Okay, so we'll record the settings for you, or at least we'll put them on the screen. Try and remember to play something down, and I'll swap the tubes around. I'm not being careful not to burn my fingers. So this will be a 5751 when it comes back into life.
Okay, which should be 70%.
Should be 70% of what we just heard.
Okay. I want to give that 30 more seconds because
Just to warm up.
it's such a world away
Yeah.
from the 12AX7. That's remarkable.
The frequency response sounds different to me.
Yeah.
So it's got a really, really piercing mid range.
Yes.
And
Which is what the set needs.
clearly way less gain.
Way less gain. Okay. Whole different amplifier now.
I don't want to change any of the settings because what we should do now is push it, of course, but I don't want to change it because I want the...
Yeah, we've got to hear the other one.
We've got to hear the AU7.
Yep. So gain range, if that's 70 and the AT7 is 60, then they're not a million miles away from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is an AY7, which I think is about 45%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a Mullard?
No, it's a Jan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just saw the box look familiar.
In fact, I am just going to double check. I think it's an AY7. It's a Jan 6072A, which I think is an AY7.
That is an AY7.
So let's see. How hot are you?
Obviously, the gain is reduced, but it's not like it's half the volume level. It's just much less gain, but I think it sounds rather lovely.
So we'll just, we'll, by the power of clever editing, just give you those 3 back to back again. So you thought the last one sounds...
I think it does. I think for a clean thing.
So we've dropped at least 3 dB in total output. I'm going to turn it up now
Okay.
and see what happens when we get back up to the volume that we were.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's a clean sound. I think that's amazing. Let me just...
Hold that thought.
Gorgeous.
Hold that thought. What did you just play? You played a thing in what key? Key you in?
Yep.
I'm going to whip back to the original tube, all right?
Okay.
And not change anything on the amp. The volume is currently at just over 3, about 3 1/4.
Wow.
There's something infinitely sweeter about the tone
Man. Yeah.
of
Like
the
AU7. It's amazing.
AY7 that was.
Was it an AY7?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that, I think from memory, I didn't write it down. I think from memory it's about 45, 50 compared to the 100 of the 12AX7.
Okay.
It sounded much less harsh to me.
Yeah.
Much more musical in the mid-range.
Yeah.
And it actually did wonders for that, I thought.
Yeah. So that's my favourite thing so far.
Okay, so for all of you screaming at the screen when we did the first video, just stick a 12 AY7 in there. You were right. Okay, last thing then. We've just done it with preamp valves. Let's do it with power amp valves.
Oh yeah. So this is fun.
And we've given up on the hook. It was a bad idea, and it's been humming all the way through as well. Brilliant. It's a good sounding amp, by the way, and we will.
Great sounding.
We
amp.
will nothing disparaging about the hook, just that it was the wrong idea for the show, so we've given up on it. For some time, you have been able to get these things that are called various things. I think yellow jackets.
Yellow jackets. Yes.
They have been called.
Funnily enough, you and I both have a set of them.
Yeah.
That we've had for years.
This is a groove tube equivalent. I don't know what groove tubes called them, but
Mustard. Custard.
it's called a 9-pin to 8-pin power reducer. EL84 replaces 6L6 EL34 6V6.
Snappy.
So you stick that in where the 6L6 power valve goes, and you stick your EL84 right up. No, you stick your EL84 in there, and what it does, this whatever is in there sorts out all the biasing cobblers
Correctamundo.
to make sure that you can run this power valve in that amplifier.
Yes.
Now, what do we know about EL84s, Dan?
Well, that I like them generally, and you generally don't. But a really important thing about this is you can use these in amplifiers that have a fixed bias, not a cathode biased.
Yeah.
So Hot Rod Deluxe is perfect. Anything that you've got a pop where you adjust the bias, these are good for. Now, the EL84, probably most commonly known as the power valves used in Vox amplifiers. AC15 has a pair of them. AC30 has 2 pairs. So the idea, and I think you'll hear this, a lot of people when they first got this product thought that by simply plugging these in, they would make their amplifier, turn their
Fender into a Vox.
Fender into a Vox, and doesn't quite work like that.
Not really.
But it's a step in that direction.
But the key thing is, of course, so the way they work in the Hot Rod Deluxe, that pair of 6L6 valves are putting out about 40 watts.
Yes.
These aren't capable of that.
No.
So we'll be expecting something closer to 15.
Yeah, 15.
Yeah. Maybe 12 to 15.
Yeah.
Depending on what else is happening in there. But so we're roughly halving the power of the amp. Maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more. So let's see. I really hope these two tubes are good. We're about to find out. We'll set the amp on 3, just below
Beautiful.
3, seeing as we seem to like it there. We are back to the original 12AX7, just for the record. Daniel.
That's really nice. That's really nice.
I think we're getting battered into submission. We're just between, we're about 2.5, all right?
Okay.
So I think as the amp's warming up, it's also overdriving more.
Right.
Because we are still in the clean channel. So play a bit down, and then we'll swap these tubes around.
Okay.
Right, so we have removed a pair of Groove Tubes GT 6L6 CHP rating 6 and replaced them with some EL84s with the converters.
awesome. Really awesome.
That made a great deal more difference than I was expecting it to.
Yeah.
A great deal more
I
difference.
love that.
Okay, right, so where we ended up there, as you saw, was 3. He turned on the overdrive pedal, which made it a bit confusing, but before he did that, the amp was overdriving quite nicely at 3.
It was. I just want to see what happened if I just pushed it with a bit more drive, and it just all held together.
Well, I
Lovely.
think where we should end up is I'm going to swap that preamp tube out again.
Right.
For the AY7.
Yeah.
We're going to invoke the Dr. Watson Lion Tamer.
Oh, okay.
So now there'll be 3 things, right? There'll be the preamp tube.
Yep.
Swapped out from a 12AX7 to an AY7. The power valves swapped out from 6L6s to EL84s using the requisite converters, and the Dr. Watson Lion Tamer.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're going to try and do is get down to a sensible volume. And for most people, that is 85 dB and below.
Okay.
And probably 80, actually.
Okay.
For home use, it's going to be even less than that, because the whole point of this, right, is not how can we crank it and get it to sound good at 100 dB. I think we've proven that.
Yeah.
It's about, by doing these things, can we start to get the amp working at low volume and still enjoy it?
Yeah.
So there'll be a bit of jiggery pokery. I'll need to turn the mic preamps up. But so just to confirm, 12 AY7 in V1.
Yes.
EL84s in the power section, and we'll use the Dr. Watson Lion Tamer, and we'll change as we go.
Awesome.
Ready?
Oh man, this is amazing. Back in the room.
That's what we've done. Here you go. Play away, Daniel.
It's a really sweet sound.
Yeah, obviously we've lost the visceral nature of the volume, which is a little underwhelming after you've been enjoying it for a while. But it's on 6. The clean channel's on 6. The Lion Tamer is about 9 o'clock.
Okay.
And we've made those 2 tube changes.
What's the dB meter hitting?
Give it a hit. Still up closer to 90.
Okay.
But I can tell you that I've added a good 12 dB in the mic pre's.
Oh, wow.
Which is a huge amount of gain extra. So I think that might be picking up the transients. I mean, I don't know. Just play for a sec. You might be able to get away with that at home. Not in the morning.
Yeah, it's definitely lost.
It's flatter.
It's
isn't it?
flatter. It's smoother. It's lost the edge.
Yeah. I'll crank the front end a bit more.
Yeah,
see if we get a bit
yeah.
more love.
I'm missing the front of the note now.
Yeah, and that doesn't.
It's not working
It's
with
not
that.
nice at all.
No.
Now, it's quite often we'll talk about that thing where you add gain and it's just too much and it gets lost and you lose any bloom and anything. But it's okay. So I think this is a qualified success.
Sure.
What are your closing thoughts on all of the things we've done?
I was surprised how well the EL84s worked.
Oh.
Because I really like the 12A Y7. I think it's a really sweet sounding thing, but it's very smooth. And I really like the visceral nature of this amplifier. The attack is what makes it really special. I didn't really lose that when you change the power valves because the preamp was still doing its thing. So that was my favorite. But the Dr. Watson thing was like really effective.
Really good.
And it shows you how much of that sound is created in the preamp EQ section of the amplifier.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they all had their good things because there was a point with the 6L6s with the 12A Y7 that when it was louder,
I
sounded
thought,
really sweet.
I thought it worked particularly well with humbuckers.
Yeah.
And just bringing some of the more vocal nature of the guitar through sounded really sweet. I thought.
Sure.
Whereas with the 12AX7, it was just a bit visceral and a bit spiky and a bit. So it's interesting, isn't it? There will be those of you screaming at the screen, "Oh my God, if you've got to do all this, just buy another amp." Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We're going through each of the options just to make the point that these are things that you can do. We're not necessarily suggesting you should do them all. It's really what happens when you do this. For me, it's more or less where I am with attenuators.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So with an I always find with attenuators, like 1 or 2 notches back
Great.
kind of works.
Yeah.
Any more than that, and you lose the whole deal, and you may as well just buy a smaller amp.
Sure.
If you've got to do it with any regularity. Same here. Like the AY7 with a humbucker guitar into input 1,
Sweet.
I could live with that.
Yeah.
And use the rest of the amp as is. EL84s, same kind of story.
Yeah.
Just knocking it back from, for the context of how we measure it, like 102 to 97.
Yeah.
So still totally unusable at home, still probably too loud for any sort of domestic situation, might even be too loud for some bands. But for me, doing what we set out to do, which was taming that overly visceral nature from something that's unpleasant and to
because it's that nature, you only have to be half a tweak on the knob more, and it's a massive increase, and it can be really difficult to find the level that works. So sometimes that is all you need to get that few dB back to find a usable range. So
I think for me, if you had to choose then any combination of what we've done today, what would it be?
So if it was for playing at home, I'd have the EL84s. If it was for playing live, the 12AY7. Because the EL84s would still be too quiet for me to do a live thing. But I could, with it 12AY7 with it turned up, I could absolutely use that. It'd be sweet as a nut.
Yeah. I think I'm with you. I'd be 12AY7 or a different preamp tube anyway. And probably the Dr. Watson.
Yeah.
Those two things in combination.
Yeah, they're really good.
Because it's so simple. It's so cheap. Like, I don't want to say cheap. It's so cost effective. I paid 20 quid, I think, plus shipping. I mean, that's
amazing.
Cost of a couple of sets of strings to get all that extra functionality.
Yeah.
And we'll mention in the same breath the other products that do the same job, right? So
the other stuff.
Yeah. Or you could probably make one.
Yeah.
If you were so inclined. Okay.
That was awesome.
Does that change anything from show 1 for you? He's like, when was show 1?
I'm really glad that we've extended this look at it because the valve thing was You know, I kind of, because I've spent quite a lot of time with this amplifier and the effects loop, and you know, with the stuff that I've been doing, and it's, you know, and I love both channels. I think they're both, like, with the Strat, when you go between the clean channel and it's like, man, that's right there. What a great combination of sounds.
We didn't end up hearing the other tubes with the overdrive channel, by the way, but I would imagine you can extrapolate. Because there's too much, for me, there's way too much gain in the overdrive channel anyway. So taming some of that back would be no bad thing.
Yeah, totally. The biggest takeaway thing for me was the valve thing. How, like, it's when you talk about gain reduction with a preamp valve, it's one thing to imagine that all you're doing is dropping the signal level, but the tone change in it was just outrageous.
I'm looking forward to hearing the recorded sounds back, because here in the room it was chalk and day, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Miles different.
Yeah. But the one thing about changing the power valves is you've kept the preamp thing all the same, and you're basically, the EL84s, they do have it's not a different sound, but they react differently.
Completely differently.
They react differently, but keeping that preamp the same and just reducing the power there, I thought was awesome. And actually, I'm going to take my yellow jackets home and now go and have a play with a bunch of different apps, because it's really cool.
Nice. Okay, that's us. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, as it helps. And please go to that Pedal Show store and buy merch, because that really, really helps.
Indeed.
Enables us to continue on this folly.
Yes, a massive thank you to our preferred retailers in the UK and Europe is
Anderson's Music of Guildford in Surrey.
We can probably buy one of these.
You can.
And I could also imagine you'd be able to buy one at our friends in Australia.
Would be Pedal Empire of Brisbane, Queensland.
Also, massive thank you to our patrons on Patreon.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your support. Join us on Monday for VCQs, where the patrons get that as a podcast, monthly giveaways, all that stuff. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon. Bye.